Hey y'all, Liz here with the Foxfire Dispatch. Before we get started today, a couple of quick notes. Number one, I am dealing with the cold from hell, so I apologize. I do not sound quite as clear and crisp as I would hope to. The other is we had a little sound funniness during recording, and it sounds like there's just a little like warped ghosty sound occasionally throughout the interview. I really enjoyed talking with Hannah Preston this week, and I'm so glad we did. So just bear with a little bit of audio weirdness for us this week. All right, thanks so much. Enjoy the episode.
We're building a south where no one bows, where the fire in the hills meets the fire in our vows. Foxfire rising under the night sky, burning out the lies that kept us high and dry. Brick by brick, the old walls fall away.
Y'all, welcome to the Foxfire Dispatch. I'm Liz Purvis, and I am here today for this special second spooky season episode with the lovely Hannah Preston of Influence NC. Hey, Hannah, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
So, Hannah suggested that we might dress up a little bit because this is our episode that is coming out on Halloween. I thought, wow, such a great idea. Um, Tell us about your lovely witch's hat, which you can see if you're on YouTube listening to this podcast.
Yeah, so my original intent on this podcast was to wear one of the Handmaid's Tale costumes. And because I went to a No Kings protest and of course saw a bunch of people wearing those. And I thought, oh, I've got to wear that for spooky season because every day feels like spooky season. Well, turns out they're sold out literally everywhere. Online, in person, I cannot find this costume, which I feel like is very telling to where we are now. So I had to switch out my Handmaid's Tale costume for a little witch's hat because we're making it work.
I love it. And I am playing on a Taylor Swift song. Gina and I talked about the new Taylor Swift album a couple of weeks ago, and the line in the eldest daughter one about like lambs to the slaughter, dressed up like
Oh, yeah.
wolves, they lit fire was I was like, I think there's a Halloween costume somewhere in there.
Absolutely. Yep, I love it. It's incredible.
So thank you for joining us. I know you've like really been making the rounds with Influence NC and the launch this month, and it's been so cool to like see stuff pop up at Cardinal and Pine and like across other podcasts. Would you? I know you've explained it a couple of times, but would you mind telling us about Influence NC from like your perspective in terms of what
Yeah,
y'all do and how you got started and all that?
absolutely. I would love to. So Influence NC started all of almost a month ago. So we officially launched October 1st. We are in partnership with the Fine Glass Fund and Carolina Forward. The big goal is to use social media in order to get North Carolinians invested in politics and excited about voting because so many of us love the state. But I feel like there's a disconnect between actually going out to vote, what's going on at the General Assembly, and then actual young residents. So we do three things. The first one is we actually do like a boot camp social media training for all elected officials in the state of North Carolina, free of cost. That launches on December 1st. We also have like a creator program that we're looking to start next year, really to fund just voices across the state. I live in Raleigh and I love living in Raleigh, but there's a lot more out here. All 100 counties I think need to be represented when it comes to social media. So really growing and creating that social media network across the state, specifically to talk about policy. And the other thing is I will be traveling all over the place to really highlight what's going on locally. I feel like with all of the news, the positive things really get kind of lost in the fold. And there's so many great things happening in the state, whether that's through county commissions, city councils, or just local leaders. So I'll be across the state doing that. In the first month, we've been on a couple of colleges, just talking to college students about investing in local elections, which has been really fun to see. So, yeah, my background is in public health, which is quite the turn from where I am now. But I was working in Medicaid policy, lobbying for Medicaid policy for children and families in North Carolina. And of course, talk about timing. What a time to be doing that. Decided that it wasn't really filling my cup in the way that I think it needed to. And I saw a gap when it came to people voting and young people in the state. So really took this jump But thanks to Carolina Ford and the Fine Glass Fund, we've really been taken off running.
Yeah, no, I feel like that is so exciting, and I'm curious, like, I know you mentioned the fact that legislators, like, could better at social media, and I think that's so cool that you're gonna, like, launch a boot camp for them. Was there, like, a particular, instance or, like, spark impetus for Influence NC being born?
That's a really good question. It really came down to Becky Fineglass and myself, where she had called me on a random day earlier this year and was like, I have this idea. I think you should do it. I think you should lead it. Between the two of us, we've both worked in local governments and just have been a part of the political scene in North Carolina. And then we'd go back to our day job, when it came to children and family well being and different things, and just saw there was this huge disconnect. And I think we're at a point in time where it's like there's nothing to lose right now because it's like we're losing a lot of things. So you got to get creative in how we're doing it. And so we decided we'll step up to the plate. And this is now my full time job, which I feel really grateful for. When it came to the elected officials piece, I mean, I feel like North Carolina is coined for having like Jeff Jackson and it's like the exemplary, politician on social media. But then at the same time, we've elected like Zofran Ramdani coming out of New York. And so we're really seeing a shift in what this has to look like. And then having, Anderson Clayton, the youngest Democratic Party leader in the country, there's a lot of opportunity in the state. And I feel like a lot of our elected officials weren't taking advantage of it. And multiple elected officials said to me, we don't have the funding to pay for it. And so I said, great, we'll make it for free. We are going to figure it out because I'd rather folks be online and taking that risk and connecting with their constituents than not. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error. I feel like with anything social media, it's a big moving target, but I'm excited to at least provide a resource for all of our elected officials.
I think that is so cool. It also really feels like, well, this is one of those ways where, like, uh outer culture kinda looks down its nose a little bit at, like, younger culture or younger
Yes.
means of media, like, in the form of social media, because it's like we see such a value there, right? In terms of,
Yeah.
like, ways to get these policy ideas out there, ways to, like, generate excitement, but, like, if it is not valued such that somebody can make time to learn it if it's free or to pay for it if it's not, then, like, where then there are just gaps and right-wing stuff just, like, floods the ecosystem.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I think we're seeing when one party really invested in, having that young culture online and a party that didn't. And so I kind of had some of those conversations of for our constituents or for our legislators in the state that don't want to use it. The conversations have talked me through why, what's the hesitancy? Because I forget, I've had Instagram since I was 11. Other folks, that's not the case. And so I think some of it is intimidation. I think some folks see all of like the horror stories that happen on social media. And so we've really reframed it as social media is a tool. And not only does it help, folks and residents in these districts, it also helps legislators because it saves them time, it saves them money. They can put their donation link in their bio, and then instead of door knocking, or at least as a subsequent of door knocking, they can also post on social media and see what that reach looks like. And I just think in a world of political violence right now, moving online still allows an opportunity to be able to meet with your constituents, even if folks don't want to open their door or go to a political event, because I think that's also happening right now. So this provides a more equitable way to have that one on one time in some kind of sense with your elected officials that you wouldn't have had beforehand.
That totally makes sense to me. I also wanna go back to the idea that you had Instagram since you were 11,
Yeah.
because I think it was, like, my senior year of college, and, like, that was one of the things when listening to some of your other interviews, I was like, "I'm so interested in, like, talking about, like, our different perspectives on, like, Trump and
Yeah.
politics and the United States," because, like, I grew up with Obama in the background, my folks were not, like, really political, like, I really came to this stuff in college, but, like, you
Yeah.
have always known a crazy president, like
Yeah, the first election I could vote in was 2020. And I was actually thinking about that when I was like doing my makeup this morning because I think I also have to check myself of my scope of politics is very extreme. And people that are younger than me have an even more extreme scope of politics. And so I feel like sometimes I want to post these videos to be like, even like this morning, Mike Johnson did a press conference on a TikTok live that I saw, and he spent most of his time talking about Zafar Mamdani's campaign. That is absurd during week, what, 4 of a government shutdown federally, where people are about to lose their SNAP benefits before Thanksgiving, that they're focusing on a local mayoral race. That is insane. And so I often forget of like, well, there are people that are younger than me realize the insanity of that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been interesting. You know, I'm not from North Carolina. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland originally. I moved down here in 2018 to go to undergrad and then stay for grad school. And it's hopefully where I'll stay for a good chunk of my life. But politics there was a little bit different, I think. And my family didn't really talk about politics in the same way. And so it really wasn't until I moved down to North Carolina that I realized, oh my gosh, here's kind of my role and what that looks like. I'd been a city council internship and worked for the Baltimore City Health Department to get my little taste of politics. But really, I feel like my start to politics really transformed when I moved down here.
That's so interesting to hear. So you moved into like one of the college towns, right?
Yes.
And have like stayed largely in the like triangle area, right?
Yeah, in Greensboro, and then it was from Greenville to Burlington for a little. Burlington is Chapel Hill to Durham, and now I'm in Raleigh.
Okay, so we both just lived up and down 40. I've just gone a little
Yeah,
like further east and west, basically.
yeah,
That's too funny. I'm I'm curious if your experience of the like kind of North Carolina thing feels different because than like in some rural places. Basically, in a lot of the rural places I've lived, like Oxford included, there's definitely this vibe of like, well, you're not from here unless your granddaddy's granddaddy lived here, you know? And so
yeah,
I grew up when my dad was in retail, so we, like, moved around a lot, and so I feel, like, very much
yeah.
like home is where you make it, home is where you decide to, like, be there and change it and be a part of the community, but I'm curious, like, if you've experienced some of that kind of attitude as, like, a transplant.
Absolutely, and a lot of my videos, that's always the first, like, critique I get, it's always, "Are you from here?" And it's like, "No, but I love North Carolina just the same as you do." Like, I'm not here to have this big culture shift and change the state. I'm here because I love the state. And if I can help as many people in the state as possible, I'm going to. But yeah, I've heard that and will continue to hear it all the time. And, you know, I think it's how you frame it. No, I'm not from here. This is my chosen home. And I love that I've chosen this state. And I'm going to choose to stay even in what is the craziness that is now. But yes, that is quite frequent conversation that I have with folks.
I don't know that it's, like, good to know that that's, like, a vibe in the more urban parts of North Carolina too, but it
Yeah.
definitely is a consistent vibe. I feel like, an old guard has had that I am just, like, ready to do away with personally.
Yeah, and, like, some of it I get, you know, I think my family is, like, 4 generation Baltimore, and so if someone was gonna come in and, you know, try to make some changes or be vocal, I could understand why the older generation could be a little bit hesitant. And my question I've always said to some of our older folks is, like, "Walk me through that. What's the hesitancy of a transplant that's here?" Because we're now one of the fastest growing states in the country. A lot of people are coming from up north, so a shift is happening. But I think it's also that nuance of not leaving folks behind that have always been here and finding a place for those folks that are moving in.
Yeah, and, like and creating opportunity for the
Yeah.
kids and students who are here
Yeah.
because I feel um, like years ago, Jason Kander said something on a podcast that really stuck with me about how, like, a lot of people, you know, a lot of parents will just want the same three things. And one of those things is like their kids being able to live, work, and succeed within driving
Yeah.
distance. And like, I definitely got the vibe growing up that like to succeed here, you have to leave and like maybe come back.
Yeah.
Um, And that just, like that doesn't have to be the case, but also things are not gonna change in the rural and, like, exurban parts
Yes.
of the state unless we, like, really intentionally have policy that shifts things.
Yeah, and I think job incentives too. We talked a lot about that when I was graduating from the School of Public Health because, of course, we're seeing the gaps in the rural areas. But when it came to recruitment for public health jobs, it was almost always in urban areas. And so we would talk about the shift of like, obviously, there's these like deserts of air in these like very rural parts of the state. But also, even in school, the recruitment was never to go toward those areas. And so, for someone like me who would, just moved there or, been there for a couple of years, but didn't know the extents of North Carolina, without a push like that and a job incentive, I'm not sure if that's a place I would have lived. So we've had that conversation actually with folks at the Gilling School of Public Health on faculty to be like, I think you should reframe when it comes to talking about job search to reinvest in some of the counties that you're trying to get people out of when really you should be putting more money into. So it's definitely been an interesting conversation to have from the public health lens and then obviously also the political lens too.
Yeah, 100%. A little segue, because I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about in the beginning, but your launch party at the Velvet Hippo, it was so good this past weekend.
Thank you. I did not know what to expect. I feel like with anything new, especially as a woman, you really doubt yourself in the beginning where you're like, I'm going to do this new thing. It might go great. It also might fail. I don't know, but we're going to do it. We're going to look cute while doing it. So I really had no expectation for this event. And I originally anticipated 25 people. And I was like, I hope the room gets filled. All I need is 25. And then we had over 100 people show up, which I just feel so grateful for, and there's a moment where I'm sitting there with my boyfriend, and we're looking around, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, the room is full, people are happy, and it's a political event, and I can't believe it." But yeah, I just feel so grateful that many people were in the room, people traveled so far to be there, and it was just so much and more for what I'd hoped for the event to be.
It was really good. I mean, it was such a fun event. I think Velvet Hippo is such a cool venue in
Yes.
Durham to do something at. Like, your branding looks great and, like, the swag was really fun, and I also think about how you said talking to somebody from Cardinal and Pine, or maybe actually somebody from Carolina Forward, just talking about, like, bringing joy back into to politics and things, and I feel like that's so worth highlighting in this, like, very dark time, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in time over the last year where I was in this doom and gloom a lot. Where I'm like, I'm just a girl. I'm 25, going to get drinks and coffee with friends, and there's also all of this stuff that feels so big. Um, and in my last job, I was working with people who were Medicaid recipients in the state. And I knew a lot earlier than most. I was, ringing those kind of alarm bells last September that Medicaid was going to get cut, and that would mean loss in North Carolina. And I didn't know how to compartmentalize that. I was just getting so down in the dumps about it because these things are big. What's happening now is big. And if I was going to do anything in politics, I wanted to bring joy because I think we deserve that. I think, voting is a right and it can be used for really great things. Politics can also be used for really great things, and it's not right now. And so I think there's a reframe to get people excited and invested because people need hope. And I will be damned if this federal administration is the reason that people lose it. But if I could be at least the reason that a couple of people had joy and hope for what's going on as a young person in North Carolina, I'm going to do that every time. So it's been fun, and that's why the branding's been fun too because, you know, girls more to North Carolina. Yeah, it's fun, it's cute, people wanna wear it, and I just think people deserve to smile right now, and we're not seeing a lot of, reasons for it, so
Yeah, and I think it's harder to, like, wake up and do this work if cannot find some kind of positive headspace, joy, thing that keeps you going, like, etcetera. So I think it's, like, really cool and admirable that that's a component of this campaign.
thank you, I really appreciate it.
Another kinda question that I was thinking about as I was thinking about, like, our, like, generational differences was, like, how can folks who are millennials or, like, younger Gen Xers who, like, want to support this work or support, like, getting messaging to Gen Z? Like, how can they help and support? How can we help and support without, like, taking over?
Yeah, I think it's a question that will constantly kind of be evolving. And so I think a lot of the times, I've been talking to a lot of legislators about the conversations they have with their kids because, there's some folks and kids and what that looks like. And like, do y'all have your kids that look over your social media? Do you guys talk about what's going on? And I think message sharing and message testing with different age groups is really important. And so I'd say for me, like feedback on what we're doing is always tremendously important because the goal is to increase reach. And if it's not messaged well, or if it's not messaged in a way that's getting to you, then I'm not doing my job correctly. So I would say critiques are always a good thing. I think for people that are in the financial space to also donate, we're seeing this gap when it comes to fundraising and when young candidates run for office. Because a lot of people do not want to donate to a young person, whether that's an organization like ours, whether that's a young candidate, because there's a risk involved. And so I would say for the younger or for the older folks, um, you know, you have to get risky right now when it comes to who you're donating to. Because, unfortunately in politics, money backs a lot of what we do. And so if there's someone who is maybe not the most ideal candidate, or not, the Gen Zer, and you're not fundraising for them, they don't get the same reach. And so I think we're going to have to see older generations donating in different ways because that's how young people can then be elevated and be successful. It makes you think a lot of Maxwell Frost when he was running. And he said that he maxed out, so many credit cards because politics is not designed to be for young people right now. Do I think that that's true? Absolutely not. I think there's ways that we're breaking those cycles, but historically it hasn't been because of the financial burdens and different things. So I think those are a couple of ways. And I would say just showing up, what I'm doing is I think just an example of having people come together, showing up and bringing hope. You can do that in all of your communities, whether that's through a book club or, different things. Start to just get creative in how you get folks involved and share our messaging and kind of reduce the silos that are going on in politics as well.
That makes sense. I'm into that. And I think also, like, being, welcoming in all of these
Yes.
spaces. I feel like it can be easy in organizing spaces as in elsewhere for there to be, like, in groups and cool kids, and just, like, being glad that new people show up is such an and, like, making people feel that, I think, is such an important part of building a bigger tent that we, like, desperately need to build.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too is I feel like in a lot of organizing, not just political, but in general, there's not a lot of active listening that goes on. And then sometimes when people say like, "Hey, there's this need in this part of the state, can you come and support?" If you're not hearing the needs of the community you're trying to serve, you're not actually doing the job. And so I think a lot of that is also reaching out to what the needs are of folks. I'm not just going to show up to a county that I haven't reached out to beforehand. To me, it just feels performative versus if there's an organization that's in that community that I know that wants to partner with us and have us go out, then we'll do that. So if there's also organizations that want to partner, reach out. I know we've gotten a lot of feedback of like, you haven't gone to this part of the state yet, or this part of the state. And that's intentional because I it feels inauthentic to me just to like show up and be like, hey, I'm here versus really being ingrained in the community before showing up and investing in the community in that way.
That makes sense. But also you said, like, listening is important, right? And
Yeah.
aren't you going to, like, Western North Carolina in part because folks had said, like, "Hey, come out here, we're young people are out here
Yeah.
and interested too."
Absolutely, yeah, so we'll be in the West, which I'm really excited about. I mean, I think talk about a part of the state that just needs so much love and joy right now, so if there's anything that we can do, I'm gonna try to be out there as much as possible in different parts of the West because I love Asheville, but there's so much more to Western North Carolina than Asheville, so, yeah, we'll be out and about. I'll be in Western Carolina, in about 2 weeks, and then we'll figure out some other events there as well.
Cool, cool. If Park Inglefield wins her mayoral race in Hickory and Catawba County, there might be something fun that y'all could do. She just I mean, I know she's either, like, young millennial or, like, older Gen
Love it.
Z, one or the other, and delightful. Somebody whose campaign I'm excited about. I'm like, "Yeah, Cahaba County,
Yes.
we can find some more blue people out there, I just know it."
Yeah, and I think that's a thing too. Like we're about to be, going into a municipal election. I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm also excited to be on the road starting November 5th because when people win, and if they're younger, I will be contacting you because I feel like people need to be highlighted, especially in some of these towns that are outside of our major cities, because that is incredible to win a campaign, especially as a young person. And so I want to highlight and just support in that. So definitely see a lot more partnerships with elected officials after the municipal elections as well.
I love that. I know we talked a little bit about the Durham races. What races are you, like, excited about in the municipals across the state this year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of my friends is running in Garner, Kelvin Stalling. So I'm really excited to see how his race goes. It's always so fun to be at an age where, like, I have friends that are in office or running it for an elected office. So I'm excited for that one. I know Greensboro City Council has a lot of great folks running as well. And then Durham, of course, that's where I lived before this. And Durham is always a very lively race when it comes to municipal elections. There were a lot of really young candidates this year. I think as young as 22. So even though those folks didn't end up, going on to the election, they didn't go past the primary. I just think that's a testament to the culture shift we're having. When young people are, showing up and are running for office, it's just such a testament. So I'm excited for Greensboro. I'm excited for Durham and Garner as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am. I'm excited about the Stallings race too. I feel good vibes for him. So we talked a little bit about like the hope and joy of influence and
Mhm.
see, and also I think just as we talk about these races that get us excited, like I feel like that is my question is like, hey, what's like giving you and Gen Z hope? And I'm just thinking about like, and when these young people get elected, like that gives us hope,
Yes.
like in a
Absolutely.
big
And I
way.
think it's really fun to see campaigns that are really non-traditional. I'm forgetting her name now, but there is someone running for Miami commissioner. And she is just this cute little thing who's fully going off of like a legally blonde look. And it's so curated and it's so fun that every time I see her video, I'm like, you're running for office and this is what you're doing. Like the branding is just gold. And so I think we also need to see more joy in campaigns because I feel like sometimes you see a campaign ad and you're like, God, this is dreadful. This is so dry. This is another guy in a suit versus like someone that's, a little bit more authentic to them. And so I think when we see these campaigns that are just true to who they are as people and not as politicians, so it brings me joy. So I think that's been really fun to see this year. And I hope we only continue to see more of that too.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. I just think about like all the political ads that have come across my feed that prey on very much like fear and just, the
Yeah.
amygdala, like the stress center. And it's just like, I so don't want that. And I think that a whole lot of young folks across a couple generations are also so over that.
Absolutely. And you think about all the people that are not voting. We know that last year's election, there was like 54% of people that voted in the presidential election that were 18 to 25. I think about people who have lived in North Carolina for a long time and don't vote because they're discouraged. It's like, yeah, I think that's the point. People want you to feel discouraged right now and not have you voting. And we're seeing what happens when that fear really gets ingrained in people. And so I think we need to bring it back. Like voting is cool. Voting is fun. Local races do really awesome things for us. And when statewide general assemblies operate in the way that they're supposed to, they can do some really cool things too. So I think we've just got to reframe because people have to act in politics. And I think there's just a way to bring joy in at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think so. Do you have a first memory of like going with parents to vote or anything like that? Or was your first I also feel like in 2020, like, maybe it was a mail-in ballot. Did you go in person? Like, tell me about that for you.
2020, I did go in person. My memory of politics is from my grandma, who is someone that is like my ride or die. And I love her, and I feel like she was um, just so what you'd want a female activist kind of to be. And so, as a little kid, when she has this fridge, she still has it, where she would have these clippings from newspaper articles and different things. Well, almost every single picture was Barack Obama, and then it was Michelle Obama. And she would just be the person that would talk to me about politics. And at the time, I didn't really have an understanding because I was, 8 or 10 or 12. Um, my family had somewhat of an organizing background, but um, it was still kind of taboo of, oh, it's not dinner table talk. Where she was like, fuck the dinner table talk. We're talking about it. We're going to talk about Planned Parenthood. We're going to talk about how you can organize, what protests you should go to. And so she is really someone that I think has been the backbone and foundation of politics for me. And I just carry a lot of her things that she said through the years with me. I feel like when I organize, yeah, so I think that's been the first one. When it came to being in North Carolina and voting, because I've lived in so many different places, I've gotten to kind of vote in a lot of different voting areas, and I've worked some polling, and they're always such positive experiences, which I think is just a really cool thing to be able to say.
Cool. Also, I'm so curious, like, talk to me about, like, what kind of work you did at the polls and, like, how young folks might be able to do that, because I feel like it's so hard for folks who have full-time jobs or are students to, like, find the time to
Yeah.
volunteer during the day.
Absolutely. I would say through being a part of Young Dems of Durham, I got to know a lot of the college Dems, and I got to know a lot of the teen Dems pretty well. And as a high schooler, I was really focused on organizing in my own school. Being from Baltimore, we had a lot of gun-related violence, and so we did a lot of organizing around that, but didn't really have that same connection with our local races. And so to see some of these folks who cannot vote because they're not old enough yet, to still be out there working the polls, I think is amazing. And so some of the ways that I think you can get involved is even if you're there handing out sample ballots during election time, being a poll greeter is always really helpful. I know right now, I think in a couple of counties, they're looking for folks just to make sure that like polling is going well and everyone is where they're supposed to be. But there's so many different ways to get involved. And so if you definitely can, I think folks should. I think sometimes people get nervous when it comes to voting because it's a big deal. It's important decisions, but it doesn't have to be scary. And so I think working the polls is a really great way to be like, oh my gosh, all these people are just here to, activate their civic duty and make this community better. And I think that's a really great thing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I like that so much. I also feel like so I have like managed the poll grading and whatnot for Granville like last year. But in 23, I was like out at the polls doing it
Yeah.
myself. And like my big takeaway was that like even for an introvert, like, not as bad as you might think. Like, for all that there may be some, like, party opposition, animosity, like,
Yeah.
the poll greeting people were all really nice and civil to each other, you know? Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that has not quite been the case in Granville this year, but it's
Oh no.
mostly been Republican on Republican drama. So, you know, but, like, I went to a couple of different places, like, some of our bigger small polling locations, some of our littler, like, at a fire station polling
Yeah.
locations, and, like, even in the places that we needed to be in close proximity as poll greeters, just, like, overall found, folks were nice. Folks we didn't get, we stayed away from the topics that we might argue about naturally, like, and just did our own thing and chit-chatted, and, like, it was really, like, impressive that it felt more normal
Yeah.
than I think a lot of stuff has felt lately.
Absolutely. And I think it's where organizing in your precinct is really cool as well. And so I think a lot of folks forget that like precinct organizing is a thing. And I think that's a really fun way to keep it so community centered. Here are the 50 people that live in this small part of my zip code. And I just think it brings a more like humanization way back to it. Because as you said, like there's been this hostile kind of culture that revolves around politics right now. Especially when it comes to local stuff. It's like, okay, we're all here because we live in X county in X part of the community. Like, we're trying to make this a better place for each other's families and for one another. Like, can that just be the baseline? So I think it's cool that you've had that opportunity, and I hope that folks can get that opportunity as well. I don't know if that's something that we will see in 2025. I don't know if we'll see it in 2026. I think there will be glimmers of it, but I think we will have to put in some more work to maintain that kind of civilized conversations right now because it feels hard to even have some basic conversations with folks.
Oh, yeah, yeah, 100%. It really, like, it runs just such a gamut. But, yeah, I think a really good thing for folks to be involved in, if they can. I mean, pole grading is definitely, like, less intense an activity than door knocking,
Uh,
but, like, also a really great way to provide, like, a basic level of repping candidates you wanna support and helping people, make those voting decisions, I think is really cool. So, jumping around a little bit, what are the issues that you feel like really define Gen Z's political identity in North Carolina?
it's a great question. It makes me think of an article that came out probably a month ago now, where it ranked how young people voted and like their top 10 things that they cared about. And you saw based on who voted Republican, who voted Democrat, baseline, everybody wanted a job. Everyone wanted to make sure they were financially stable. Um, I think a lot of people right now are still in North Carolina looking for a job that it can pay, that is, a well paying job. I think affordable housing because rent has spiked so much. And I think access to care. I think about being able to just live in Raleigh, afford my rent, go to work, and still be able to go to whatever doctor's office you need. Um, because it's expensive to be a young person right now. It's also to be a person in general right now. But
You're right, it is, like, specifically uniquely for young people with, like, less work experience under your belt, even if you started,
yeah,
young, you're still like, I think about so I lived in Raleigh from 2014 to 2016 and went to
um,
NC State for grad school, and, like, I think somewhat frequently about how, like, and I went to grad school right after undergrad. It was, like, a fully funded program with a small stipend, but I was like, I
yeah,
could live on that stipend because I was just out of college. I
yeah,
hadn't, like, worked a full-time big girl job before, like, you could get help, still in parents' health insurance, and my
yeah.
one-bedroom apartment was $690 a month. Yeah.
That is wild. That is
Which I know
wild.
is, like, so not there's, like, nowhere livable in
No,
Raleigh for you that would be
no.
anywhere near, and I just think about, like, how yeah, how do you make the choice to go to school and, like, potentially take on more debt to go to a grad school or to put yourself through college and live off campus, like,
Yeah.
when the cost of living is is what it is.
Absolutely, and I feel like so I'm 25, and so I was a COVID college kid because the job market was terrible. I went to grad school, and got, like, a teaching assistant job, so all of it my tuition was covered, um, but I think we got caught in this weird time of it is ingrained in you that for you to get a well-paying job, you have to go to college, and in most instances, you have to go to grad school, and so for a lot of people, now you're swimming in debt until you're 60 because most people take out student loans, and then you're told that it's gonna be easy to find a job post-grad. Well, it's the biggest joke of the year because it always takes so much longer, and they always want you to be so much more qualified than you are. And so I think you kind of have to pick and choose of, okay, do I take a job that isn't exactly what I want, but they don't want to take me because they don't have this qualification. And like North Carolina in general is expensive. When I first lived here, I was living in Greensboro. I was paying $800 and splitting it with someone, so it was $400 a month. I'm now in Raleigh and I'm paying over 1,000 or a little close to over 1,000 a month. And that's on top of just being a human and having a car payment and things like that. The other thing is, I'll turn 26 in January, which means I'm no longer on my parents' health insurance. Now, this fun time that is healthcare that is now going through the roof. I don't know what that looks like. And I'm someone that has 2 degrees in public health. Like, I like to think I'm probably somewhat equipped in this, and it's still, really anxiety provoking. So I think people are just trying to figure out financially, how do you still be a young person and build community and do the things that early 20s should be doing, like going out with your friends and things, while also realizing it's hard to live and financially afford everything that you have to as a young person.
Yeah, and if that's an issue, like, how do you have more to give to volunteer your time for free for causes that you even if they're causes you care a lot about?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that at this our event over the weekend, I had so many people that said, I can't do it financially, but I'd love to volunteer with you. And it makes me feel so uncomfortable because I truly believe that people should not work for free. Everything in me that I'm like, I almost want to say no because I feel like I should be paying y'all for the work that you're doing. And I'm so grateful that folks want to volunteer. And also, it doesn't feel right in my practice to have folks spending their Saturday with me and me not being able to pay them. And so there's kind of some ways we counterbalance that. Like if you're volunteering with me, you will be getting a meal. You will be getting some kind of like merch or something because that's what I can give. I can make sure that people are fed if they're going to give their time. Because I also think if you want to get people together, you have to feed them. And so that's one of my big things. From like the goal is that I can fund volunteers and, staff and all of that. But for right now, we're at least making sure that people are not leaving hungry. So,
Yeah, I so relate to that. Like we are not at the point of like having a whole lot of swag to give out with Granville. I wish we did.
yeah.
And like honestly, I need to get on the find a t-shirt design and like print some things train. Um, but, like, when we got to a decent point with the county party bank
Yeah.
account, it was like, "Okay, well, we can pay for our expenses." We got to the point where we can pay our rent. It was like, we're gonna have food for people when we have events. And, maybe not every event because we don't always have the people power to, like, prep it and
Yeah.
do the setup and clean up, but, like, as many as we can, as many as it makes sense for, like, there is food because you don't know who in your community is hungry, and because that's
Yeah.
an important community service that you can offer when you're asking for a couple hours of people's time, whether it's to sit in
Yeah.
an event or to, like, volunteer and pitch in some way.
Especially now when we know that SNAP and WIC are going away. And there's just so much uncertainty when it comes to food, which like rocks me to my core because food should be affordable for everybody. Food, I think, should be a right. And so the fact that it's not, and it's during what's about to be winter and Thanksgiving, it's like so French Revolution to me. It's disgusting. So we've been more so we're trying to bulk up like how can we provide support to make sure that people are fed. Food insecurity is something that not a lot of people talk about in the same way. I think there's unfortunately a lot of stigma around it and a lot of embarrassment, but also we just talked about how it is so expensive to live in the United States. So it's such a, dichotomy of we also need to make sure people are fed at the same time if they're going to be spending their time volunteering with Influence NC.
Yeah, yeah, I'm also, like, into this idea of, like, food as a right, like,
Yeah.
that you deserve um, equitable access to, like, nutritious, healthy food. I know we talked really briefly about Zoran Mamdani earlier, and, like, I think about his proposals to, like, to either subsidize or have some, like, city managed or city-owned grocery stores, and I wanna say last week that there's, a place in Canada that is doing, like, the first free grocery store of its kind, and community
No.
members can come in up to once a week and get up to 200 Canadian dollars worth of food, like, no questions asked, no judgment, and I was just like, "What a cool concept."
Yes, there's actually one of those in Baltimore. It was a younger woman who opened it, I wanna say last year. I wish I could remember what the store was called, but it is a fully free grocery store. And so I think for a lot of communities, this feels like this such like a far off idea. And I think our tax dollars are just going toward things that maybe you're not as supportive to as community as it should be. And so I think seeing folks like Zopron that are promoting things like that, I think we could do it. And I think we need to. I mean, the fact that 42 million people are on SNAP and a lot of those folks are working and have jobs shows that there's a disconnect. And I think when people are fed, when people are given nutritious foods, they're happier, the life expectancy increases. We see, kids are healthy and have a lot fresher starts when they have access to nutritious foods. And there's always this conversation of, oh, well, the economy. Great. Let's fund people. Let's give them food and housing and transportation. And I promise you, the economy will be doing much better than what it is now. Um,
I don't wanna hear any conservatives saying shit about the economy this, the economy that over food stamps when we are sending $40 billion to bail out another country. Like, and I
Literally.
am generally, like, so for, like, support of other, we've been colonial and, like, so we share
Yeah.
some responsibility for the fucked up shit that has
Yep.
happened
Yep.
elsewhere, but, like, just handing tens of billions of dollars to another country when you could just subsidize these whole programs that feed millions of people, like,
Yes.
it does not compute in my brain.
No. And I always say, like, when there's things I don't understand, I always say, thank God I don't understand them. Because the second I do, I know I'm now part of the problem. And so I think if that's something, there's so many food pantries across North Carolina. There's so many of the like free, like little meal like boxes. And I think the folks that are able to really contribute to that, we're gonna have to see folks doing that now more than ever. I think it's been really cool to see in the last week how people have stood up and kind of said, okay, I don't really know how to get involved, but here's what I can contribute. But I think now we're at a scary time in history. And I think we're going to have to see our neighbors kind of working together to rebuild whatever this will look like in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it is important for people to be able to pitch in how they can in ways that
Yeah.
are effective and meet needs. I know here in Granville, our libraries have like a little free fresh food pantry that gets
Mhm.
stocked by local farmers every week with
Awesome.
different seasonal like veggies and fruits and things like that. And I just think that that's like a really cool just an access point for the community in addition to like the Christian ministry that we have out here that does,
Yeah.
like, giving away goods and things like that.
Absolutely. That's what's so interesting too. I feel like when we talk about SNAP, because SNAP was also originally created not only to help people, but to also help farmers. And so I think we're going to see this really interesting shift in North Carolina to see how other programs will support farmers across the state when we know SNAP could potentially go away.
Yeah, and then it's just like, God, another one of those examples of these stupid conservative policies, like, just turning around and hurting people, hurting all kinds of people in all
Yeah,
different situations. Just what a shame.
absolutely. And I think about how many veterans are on programs like SNAP because I feel like in a lot of the conservative eyes, I feel like folks really fetishize that. Where the far right folks are like, "Oh, well, our veteran," and it's like, yeah, veterans are so great, and I think have done so many great things, and also we're seeing a party that has not financially supported them in the ways that are needed, and we're seeing that through SNAP. We're seeing that through cuts to Medicaid because so many vets are on both of those programs that are now going to be left out to dry.
Yeah, yeah. I know our friends at the Military Families Foundation have been talking about that, how much folks, you know, who are in the military access food pantries because they need to, and how missing a couple paychecks is definitely just gonna widen the number of folks who need to do that.
Absolutely.
Before we get into like a fun little, lightning round that I've been trying to end
Yeah.
on with some of our guests, is there anything else you really want, our listeners to know about or things we didn't cover that you just like want to take a second and tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say we have a lot of really fun events coming up across the state, and we're trying to bulk up what next year looks like. So if there's organizations that want to partner, if there's elected officials that want us to come visit, please reach out to us. We are really here to just be boots on the ground, and really just highlighting the awesome things going on across Carolina.
Love it. Love it. Um, okay, so these I've kind of changed up. Like we did one of these with Anderson, we did one with an alum. Um, just a fun closer. Don't have to think too
Okay.
much about it.
Okay.
Um, this or that, sweet tea or cheer wine.
Ooh, sweet tea.
Getaway weekend in the beach mountains or city.
Mountains.
Are you a dog person or a cat person?
God, my dog is sitting on my lap right now.
Love. Would you prefer to write a protest sign or pin an op-ed?
Protest sign for sure.
Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok.
Beyonce or Dolly Parton?
Dolly Parton.
Chapel Hill or Asheville?
Ooh, gosh, I feel like I have to say Chapel Hill because I went there.
Optimist or realist?
Depends on the moment. I'll go with realist.
Voting early or voting on election day?
Voting early.
Woo, yeah. All the cool kids do it. Hot girl summer or community care winter?
Ooh, community care winter. I don't like to sweat.
Oh my god, it's just starting to be like crispy fall here, and it is
Thank God.
beautiful, beautiful.
Thank God.
Uh, if you're doing tacos, brisket or pork?
Ooh, pork.
And mustard based or vinegar based barbecue?
I feel like I'm gonna get canceled no matter how I answer this one. I'm gonna say vinegar based.
Love it, love it. I love a good vinegar based barbecue and then like a little extra mustard sauce on
Yes,
there. That's my
definitely.
jam.
I love
um,
it.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm
Oh,
so excited about Influence and Z and just like everything that you're getting up to. Oh, okay. One final question that did not make
yeah.
it into my notes, but I was like, gotta ask this girl. You are always like impeccably styled. Like you have the greatest fucking fashion sense. Like, how have you like built your personal style and like figured shit out like that?
That's a great question. I will say, so I'm 5 foot and I have not grown since the 6th grade. And so I've been able to keep a lot of my clothes for a lot longer than I should. So I will say that is part of it. The other part is I rent a lot of my clothes. I feel like being in politics, there were so many events and it just wasn't sustainable to me. And I didn't have the finances to be buying outfits for all of these events. And so I thought, okay, let me figure out how I can do this. So I rent a lot of my clothes. I feel like that's been a good like financial way to do things. And then also to be smarter and more attention about what I'm actually buying. And I get to have fun with it. I was at an event and was talking to Elaine Marshall and it's, a political event. So most of the room is men. Most of the room are in gray, navy, or black blazers. And she comes walking in this rainbow bright pattern dress. And we're one of probably 5 women in the room. And I'm like, Elaine, I love this dress. Tell me about it. And she goes, I'm often the almost always the only woman in every room. I've got to make sure people remember me. And that means I'm going to dress bright. I've worn a bright color every time since then. It totally shifted my mentality about being in a room and taking up space in politics. And I'm just so grateful that I had that story that he showed me because I feel like I'm going to carry that with me for a long time. And so, like the General Assembly this last week, normally I don't have my tattoos covered. It's like pretty frowned upon. I feel like that's just Southern politics right now. So I was like, well, at least I'm going to go bright. I'm going to have some fun shoes on. My hair's going to be done. So I think you can look good and still be in politics. And so I've just been having fun with it. It's been bringing me a lot of joy recently.
Well, it is always delightful to see you, and I'm always just like, damn, that girl looks really good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna pause this here and I'll like do the intros and outros. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Foxfire Dispatch. If today's discussion lit a spark, please help us fan the flame by sharing this episode with your neighbors, dropping us a note on social, or emailing us at thefoxfiredespatch@gmail.com with your questions, stories, or ideas for bringing about a better South. We put out our episodes on Fridays, and if you like our content, you can find us at the Foxfire Dispatch on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, and Foxfire Dispatch on TikTok and Twitter, aka The Bad Place. We would be especially thrilled if you would subscribe on YouTube. And if you do today, you will see our fun Halloween costumes too. Until next time, remember, we are who we're waiting for. Now go get in some good trouble.
Time to rise and start a new day. Time to rise and start a new
Music
day.
today is produced by John Vince. The Foxfire Dispatch is written and executive produced by me, Liz Purvis.